This is Travel in 10.
And now, your host, David Brody.
Hi, welcome to Travel in 10. My name is Tim Johnson. I am the new co-host this year, and I'm joined by somebody David Brody. And we are chatting this week about road trips. Yeah, as we live in the COVID age, as we've been under quarantine and lockdown for the last couple months, what we've been hearing more and more is that the first trips that we're going to all feel comfortable doing are probably going to be road trips, places where you can be self-contained in your own vehicle, places where you can control your contact with other people. And, I absolutely love road trips. I grew up every year, the highlight of the year for our family growing up here in Ontario was the annual summer road trip. And we would drive all the way across the country to British Columbia. We drive to California, to Florida. And so I love the fact that we're going to be taking more road trips. How do you feel about that, David, with things opening up?
Well, I definitely like you, grew up doing a lot of road trips. I grew up in Alberta, but coming to BC for a camping trip was a big deal growing up. This is going to be much different this summer for my kids. Our last summer, we spent most of the summer in France. The summer before that, most of it in Italy and Switzerland. So this is the first time that we're going to be within a 2-hour radius of home pretty much all summer. But we're lucky for here on the West Coast. There's a lot of great places to go. And the other thing, normally here on the West Coast between Seattle and Vancouver, a lot of travel back and forth between the two cities. My sense is for most of the summer, we're going to, whatever side of the border you're on, you're probably going to be stuck on that side of the border for the summer. So I think we're going to try and do a few quick hits on great places to go from either, a few from here out of Vancouver and a couple of places that you can go out of Seattle as well. My top three, we'll just talk broadly and then we can get into some specifics, but I think Tofino, the Okanagan, and the Gulf Islands for sure are like the top three destinations to be able to hit out of Vancouver. And if you haven't been to any of the three, can certainly suggest a few places in each. I know you were in Tofino not long ago, Tim. What were some of your favorites in Tofino?
I love Tofino. Tofino, I probably say this for every place I talk about, but it really is one of my favorite places in the whole world, and maybe my favorite little town in Canada, and was just out there in early March, so just before some of the fallout started happening from the pandemic, and I've been previous times, and I was there for a story on travel story on storm watching, and talking to people. Unfortunately, what happened when I was there, when I flew into a storm. So I landed, it wasn't a road trip, I flew in, but in a storm. And so we had hail and heavy rain. And I got about 15, 20 minutes of storm. And then it was the nicest weekend of the year after that. But, the weather there, I think, is just, it's fun. Walking the beach, just getting out on Chesterman Beach and getting out and feeling the energy of the Pacific Coast, that feeling of wildness, whether it's weather or whether it's just being surrounded by that rainforest. I can't think of another place in the world where you're really out there in the wild, but at the same time, in just a beautiful town with all the luxury amenities that you can imagine.
Probably the only place I know of in Canada where you're really going to find like really true surf beaches, some amazing surf there. There's a little local surf school, called Surf Sister, run all by local women. They do great surfing classes, particularly for kids there. You've got Pacific Rim National Park. I think for my money, probably the nicest national park in Canada with these huge, really undisturbed beaches with massive surf on them. And a pro tip is that, I know the campground there is one of the few where they have sort of a partnership with Mountain Equipment Co-op, outdoor retailer here in Canada, where they've got some pre-equipped campsites where if you're traveling from somewhere else, if you don't have camping gear, you can just show up and everything you need is all set up for you at the campsite, which is super handy. And probably my favorite hotel in the region, Cox Bay Beach Resort, a great place, where they're like right on the beach. You've got a hot tub on the beach, storage for your surfboards. It's new, modern, cool spot, a great place to go.
Oh yeah. And I wanted to say, this last trip I stayed at the Wickinninish Inn, or the Wick as everyone there calls it. And they do, room with almost a floor to ceiling window that just looked out on Chesterman Beach. And honestly, there were days where I would just not the whole day, but part of the day, I would just sit and look out the window and just look at the surfers. As you mentioned, the surfers, look at the surfers on the beach, look at the people walking up and down the beach. And then they also offer, included in your stay, they offer a guided beach walk. So just a small little hike where you're walking along the beach, you're learning about the ecosystem, you're learning about the location in the world, the fact that the waves are rolling in all the way from Hokkaido in Japan, all the way over unimpeded across the Pacific Ocean. And then you do a little walk through the temperate rainforest there. So it's a great place to drive. I've driven there a couple times, and that drive, across the island from Nanaimo up through the mountains, past the lakes and everything. It really is a great place to drive to as well.
The one challenge with Tofino now is so popular, it can be tough to get accommodations in the summertime now. Ucluelet, which is just up the road, sometimes a little easier to find place there. Also beautiful. It doesn't have quite the same surf beaches, but you're only a 20-minute drive from the surf beaches there, and you're on a beautiful coast, great place for whale watching. And they got a cool new aquarium, relatively new aquarium there that you can check out on the Ucluelet side of that coast as well, which is another great spot.
And I just love the food in Tofino. So shelter, wolf in the fog, all that fresh seafood. There's nothing I love more than fresh seafood.
Moving into the interior, the Okanagan, I know one of my favorite spots for sure has got to be Naramata, right near Penticton on Lake Okanagan there. Probably at least 15, 20 wineries all within a 10-minute walk of each other that you can stumble from winery to winery with some of the best views in the Okanagan Valley and some of the best wines here in the west coast of North America. You got any favorites in the Okanagan?
I love Mission Hill. Yeah, which is I just love the feel of it. The wines are fantastic, but I love the views out over Lake Okanagan. Went on a trip there where we would actually do little hikes up through the vines, and then do tastings right out. They bring in some bottles on the back of a pickup truck, and we sit on the tailgate and we do a little tasting in our hiking boots out there. And yeah, I love Mission Hill. And there was another winery, I can't think of the name of it now, where we actually crushed the grapes with our bare feet, and that was a good experience as well. So I'm glad I didn't have to drink that wine, to be honest. But it was a very small winery. Hatch is also one of my favorites. Love the irreverence there, that it's so different from a typical winery. I remember when I was there, they had launched a line of wines where they were less appreciated grapes. So, not your Pinot Noir, not your typical, your Merlots, it was less appreciated grapes. And so they had commissioned an artist to draw labels based on hobos in the 30s. Homeless people would be less enjoyable, but hobos in the 30s, and they did illustrations of these, and so I don't, it was just kind of, who would ever think to do something like that? So they were doing experimental blends, and yeah, loved the guys there. They had great stories about the wines, and it was just an interesting place.
Well, the great thing about the Okanagan Valley, for anybody who hasn't been there before too, I mean, it's somewhere that, 10, 15 years ago, they maybe had a handful of wineries, now hundreds of wineries throughout the region, and the quality of the wine just keeps getting better and better and better with each year as you go, and a huge variety as well. I mean, as you go from the north to the south of the valley. One of my favorites, probably Burrowing Owl Winery down in the far south near Soyuz, which has a beautiful boutique hotel right at the winery, and probably one of the best restaurants in Western Canada as well, there at the winery as well.
And a great place for a drive, right? Just driving up and down Lake Okanagan and some of those views out over the lake, and every Summerland and Penticton, Kelowna, all the places have their own character. I loved Rod's, which is a great restaurant downtown Kelowna. Really, really high end cuisine, really interesting tasting menu. So that's another place that I always go to when I'm in the Okanagan and in Kelowna. Yeah.
And then finishing up in the Gulf Islands. Have you got any favorites in the Gulf Islands?
Yeah, I love the Gulf Islands. Love the Gulf Islands. I mean, the fact that it is so close to hop on a ferry and get over to Salt Spring from Vancouver. I remember I was there, would have been a couple summers ago, and I was traveling around Salt Spring, visited a friend there who had a patio back deck that overlooked George Strait. And he said at night he could actually see the lights of Vancouver from his back porch, which It's that close, but it's another world. And it has some of the things that I love, which is it had a cheese making operation, which I think is just called Salt Spring Island Cheese. It had a cidery. It had a microbrewery. It has a winery. And, I spent a couple days just, the cidery, and let me just get the name of the cidery there. You could just take the apples right there. So you could see the apples, and then you could do a tasting of the hard apple cider that they were making there. And I don't have the name of it in my notes, but it was just a truly fantastic place. And then from there, did Galliano and Pender and every island. I don't know how many islands you've been to or what your experience was there, but just every island has its own personality, right?
For sure. I've toured a lot of them. We're actually off in about 2 weeks' time to Pender Island, one of our favorites, and to a new place we've discovered called Woods on Pender, where it looks like a local chef who sort of bought a small hotel over there. But then he's also got a whole bunch of vintage Airstream trailers that he has gutted out and totally kitted out with like internet, Apple TVs. Each one has its own private hot tub, barbecue area, and they're all in sort of these remote campsites on the island, many of them with ocean views. In terms of a socially isolated travel experience, looks like about the ultimate Instagrammable sort of isolated travel experience that you can have over there on Pender Island. They even have a sort of food truck with gourmet food that you can, so if you don't want to cook everything at your own Airstream, you can go get stuff from the gourmet food truck. Looks like a very cool spot.
Yeah, I stayed at Woods at Pender, actually.
Oh, you've been there?
Year and a half ago, yeah. And it was phenomenal. I stayed in one of the Airstream trailers, and those things are kitted out. I mean, they've got it had a TV with satellite, in the Airstream trailer. So if you just wanted to chill out, watch a movie, that was cool. But it also had great outdoor furniture. You make a fire, sit outside. I had one of the trailers that had a hot tub, and I'm a man who loves a hot tub, and so spent a pretty good amount of time, probably more than I'd like to admit, just sitting in the hot tub. And they have a restaurant there also on site where at the time the owner was actually also the chef, and he's making some pretty cool creations from local products there as well. So I loved Woods on Pender.
Now, one place I want to mention, I know we've talked about a lot of places that you can do day trips out of Vancouver. A lot of people from Seattle on the other side of the border probably normally come here to Vancouver and BC during the summer. May not be able to get here this time around. There may be a lot more travel restrictions. So one great place I know out of Seattle, if people haven't already been, Whidbey Island. I mean, it's a short ferry ride. You can get there in about, I think it's about a 20 or 30-minute ferry ride out of Seattle. But equally, you can go down to on the other end of the island. There's even a bridge across that you don't even have to take a ferry if you're coming from the north side of the island. So much to see and do there. I mean, awesome seafood. They've got whale watching there. They've got Coupeville, which is sort of this very historic town with little ice cream shops, wine shops, lots of stuff to do there. And I think one of the last remaining drive-in theaters that are in the West Coast here, or at least in the Northwest, which another great thing to be able to do this summer and keep socially distanced and still get to go to a theater outside, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah, what a great way to be able to be outdoors, be watching a movie, and be self-contained, in a safe environment to go to a drive-in movie. I love that drive-in movies are coming back. So that sounds amazing.
Okay. Well, that's it, I think, for our West Coast road trips for this episode. Where are we going on the next episode, Tim?
Well, I think we're going to talk about, beverage experiences, immersive beverage experiences, which maybe I'll leave this as a teaser. I've done a literally immersive being the key word, beverage experience. And I know I know you and I have traveled together in Australia and had some pretty interesting beverage experiences.
That's
there.
right.
And so looking forward to chatting with you about that.
Sounds good. Okay, thanks, Tim.
Thanks, David.
Thanks for listening. Download more of our travel shows from around the world at www.travelin10.com.
This has been a presentation of Travel in 10.